Olivia hadn't prayed in months, not because she didn't believe in God, but because she was tired of asking for permission to breathe. The town of Dry Creek rose from the plains, like an accusation. Weathered storefronts, a crooked church steeple, dust thick enough to choke memories loose from the ground. Olivia slowed her horse at the edge of town, her heart pounding louder than the hoofbeats. This was where it all began, and where she had sworn never to return. She adjusted her bonnet, though she knew it wouldn't help. Dry Creek remembered faces, it remembered names, and hers carried weight, especially with a brother like Bob. Preacher Bob Callahan, a man who spoke of grace every Sunday and control every other day. She dismounted near the hitching post, ignoring the way conversation stilled around her. Men glanced up from card games. Women whispered behind gloved hands. Someone muttered her name like it tasted wrong. "Olivia Callahan," a voice said softly. "Well, I'll be damned." She didn't turn. 3 years ago, she had left without a word, no letter, no goodbye. Just a single truth burning in her chest. If I stay, I disappear. Now she was back, broke, tired, and done running. Across town, Bob reined in hard. The church bell had barely finished ringing when he saw her horse, blue ribbon on the bridle. His stomach dropped. "It can't be," he whispered. But it was. Bob dismounted so fast his boots hit dirt crooked. Relief crashed into anger, then into fear. He had searched 3 territories, followed rumors that led nowhere, prayed until his knees ached. And now she was here, in this town, with these people. Inside the saloon, Olivia took a seat at the far end of the bar. "Water," she said. The bartender hesitated, then slid it over. That was when the room shifted. The door creaked open. Boots crossed the threshold, slow and deliberate. The sound alone carried authority. Conversations died mid-sentence. Olivia felt it before she saw him. Brad, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in black dust and leather. A scar traced down his cheek like a warning God forgot to erase. His hat shadowed eyes that missed nothing. The most feared cowboy in 3 counties. The man every preacher warned about. Brad's gaze swept the room, then stopped on her. Something unreadable passed between them. Recognition, curiosity, trouble. He approached the bar, standing close enough that Olivia could feel the heat of him without being touched. "You don't drink," he said quietly. She didn't ask how he knew. "Not today." He nodded. Once smart, Bob pushed through the saloon doors. Moments later, and froze. Olivia. Next to him, Lord, Bob breathed. Brad turned slowly, eyes narrowing. "You know each other." Bob's voice shook. "She's my sister." Silence slammed down hard. Brad looked at Olivia, something sharp and surprised flickering across his face. "That's so?" She met his gaze steadily. "Yes." Bob stepped forward, anger rising like a sermon gone wrong. "Get away from him, Olivia." Brad didn't move. Neither did she. "I won't," Olivia said. And in that single moment, Dry Creek understood something dangerous had just taken root. Something no prayer would easily undo. The silence in the saloon felt heavier than gunfire. Bob stood frozen near the door, his preacher's coat still dusted from the road, eyes locked on the man beside his sister. Brad didn't reach for his gun. He didn't step back either. He just watched, measured, calm, dangerous in the way a storm waits. "Olivia," Bob said carefully, like her name might shatter if spoken too loud. "Come here." She didn't move. "I'm fine," she replied. "That man is standing where he's allowed." Brad cut in quietly. "Same as you." Bob's jaw tightened. "I know exactly who you are." Brad's mouth curved into something close to a smile. "Then, you know I don't like being told where I can stand." Olivia slid off the bar stool. "Enough, both of you." The bartender pretended to clean glasses. No one else breathed. Bob lowered his voice. "You vanished," he said. "Do you have any idea what you put Father through? What you put me through?" "I didn't disappear," she said. "I left." "You ran." She met his eyes. "Because staying meant obeying a life I never chose." Brad glanced between them, finally understanding. "Preacher's sister," he murmured. "That explains the stares." Bob bristled. "She's not a curiosity." Brad tipped his head toward Olivia. She's not yours either. That did it. Olivia, Bob said. Sharp now. Step away from him. She didn't. Brad noticed the tremor in her hands and the strength in her spine. I'm staying in Dry Creek, she said. At least for now. Bob stared at her like she'd confessed to a crime. You can't. This town, these people, are the same everywhere, she said softly. Just louder here. Brad took a step back, giving her space. There's a room above the livery. Widow Ames runs it safe. Bob turned on him. You stay out of this. Brad's eyes hardened. Too late. Outside, the sun dipped lower, dragging shadows across the street like long fingers. Bob followed Olivia out, his voice dropping. You don't know what he's done, Bob said. Men like him don't protect. They take. Olivia stopped walking. And men like you don't listen. The words landed hard. Brad stood a few paces away, pretending not to hear but hearing everything. Come home, Bob pleaded. Let me fix this. She shook her head. You don't get to fix me. Bob's shoulders sagged. I just don't want you ruined. She looked past him, at Brad. Some things aren't ruined. They're just unblessed. That night, trouble came early. 3 men lingered outside the livery, eyes sharp with whiskey and resentment. Bob saw them from the church steps and felt dread coil in his gut. Brad felt it too. He stepped into the street before they could act. Move along, one of them laughed. Town would breathe easier without you. Brad's hand hovered near his gun butt, didn't touch it. A bottle shattered against the dirt. The first punch followed. Chaos erupted fast. Brad fought clean, efficient, never cruel, but blood was blood, and the town didn't care whose it was. A gunshot rang out. Brad staggered as pain tore through his side. Olivia screamed his name. Bob ran forward, dropping to his knees beside Brad. His hands shook as he pressed cloth to the wound. Why would you do this? Bob demanded. Brad grimaced. Because they weren't aiming at you. Their eyes met. Something shifted. That night, Bob knelt beside the bed where Brad lay bandaged and silent, Olivia refusing to leave his side. Bob prayed for the first time, without certainty. And Olivia, watching the feared cowboy bleed for her safety, realized the most dangerous thing in Dry Creek wasn't Brad. It was staying and refusing to bow. The sun rose pale over Dry Creek, casting long shadows on the dirt street and the livery where Brad rested, bandaged but watchful. Olivia refused to leave his side, her hand pressed gently against his shoulder where the bullet had grazed him. Bob stood outside, pacing near the hitching post, his coat flapping in the morning wind. He prayed, but not as he used to. This prayer was tangled with anger, fear, and a dread he couldn't shake. Why does he get to stay? Bob muttered under his breath. Why can't I save her from this? He didn't notice Olivia stepping out behind him. Maybe because some things aren't meant to be saved, she said quietly. Bob turned, eyes sharp. Some things, she's my sister, Olivia. And yet, you tried to cage me like a sermon, she replied. Her voice was steady, but her heart pounded. You don't get to decide who I love or who I trust. Bob's hands trembled at his sides. Brad Lawson. That man is trouble. The town talks. He's feared for a reason. Olivia's gaze swept toward the livery. Brad sat on the porch steps, hat low over his eyes, watching the street. He was scarred, weathered, dangerous, and yet he had saved her without hesitation. I've seen fear, she said. But he's not the monster you think he is. Bob's jaw clenched. He carries danger wherever he goes. And now you're with him. Olivia met his eyes. I am choosing him. And maybe, for the first time in my life, I'm choosing myself too. A sudden commotion drew all 3 of them to the street. Men emerged from the saloon and stables, armed with rifles and pitchforks, faces twisted in judgment. The leader, a red-faced brute, spat on the ground. Looks like the preacher's sisters found herself a friend in the devil. Brad rose slowly, every motion deliberate. Step back, he said. His voice was calm, but carried authority. Bob stepped forward, instinctively. Olivia, get behind me. She refused. No, Stand with him. Stand with me. The mob hesitated. Brad's gaze swept over them, unflinching, dangerous. You want trouble? He said. Because I'll give you the choice to walk away or regret it forever. One of the men raised a rifle. Brad didn't flinch. Instead, he moved with the precision of someone who had survived more than his share of bullets and betrayal. Shots rang out. Dust kicked up in clouds. Brad ducked and returned fire. Not to kill, but to warn. The mob faltered. Guns lowered. Fear replaced their bravado. Olivia held her breath. Bob's hands were pressed together, but he didn't pray aloud. He didn't need to. The sermon had become real before his eyes. When the dust settled, Brad leaned against the railing, breathing heavy but unbroken. Olivia ran to him, pressing her hands to his chest. You're hurt again. He smiled faintly. I've had worse. Bob approached slowly, eyes wide. Why do you do this? He asked Brad. Why protect her? Brad's eyes met Bob's. Because she matters. And I don't leave people behind. Bob swallowed, torn between anger, relief, and something he hadn't expected. That night, as Olivia tended to Brad's wounds, Bob sat in the church pew, staring at the empty pulpit. He realized the sermons he had delivered for years had taught obedience, but life-love was teaching choice. Olivia glanced toward the window, moonlight glinting off the rifle in Brad's hand. I'm not afraid anymore, she whispered. Not of him, not of them. Not even of you. Bob closed his eyes, exhaling slowly. Maybe I should be praying differently. Brad watched them both, silent, letting the tension dissolve in the quiet night. And somewhere, under the stars of Dry Creek, three hearts understood that fear, faith, and love were more entwined than they had ever believed. The morning air in Dry Creek carried the sharp Thames of dust and gunpowder. A reminder that yesterday's chaos wasn't finished. Olivia sat on the livery porch, brushing a strand of hair from her face, while Brad tightened the straps on his saddle. His black hat dipped low over his eyes, shadowing the scar that never quite faded. A warning and a promise all at once. You're leaving, Olivia said quietly. Brad paused. I should. Too many eyes, too many guns. This town, it doesn't like men like me. Then leave, she replied. Not as a command, but as a test. He looked at her, steady and unyielding. And leave you alone. Olivia shook her head. I'm not alone. I've learned that. I can't go back to the way things were. Bob's voice carried from the church steps behind them. Olivia, you don't understand what's at stake. She turned to him. Bob, I understand exactly what's at stake. But I'm done living in fear. Of men, of rumors, of sermons that chain me. Bob's shoulders sagged. He could feel his own convictions faltering, but he wouldn't show it. Brad Lawson, you'll ruin her life. She's my sister, and I won't. She's not yours to protect, Olivia said, stepping forward. Not anymore. Brad stepped closer, placing a hand on her arm gently. Your life isn't mine either. But if we ride together, you'll have a choice, every day, not just once. Bob clenched his fists. Some choices are dangerous. Some are deadly. Brad's gaze was steady, unwavering. So is staying silent while evil runs free. So is letting fear decide her life for her. Silence fell over the street. The townsfolk peered from windows and doorways, tension thick enough to choke on. Suddenly, the mob from yesterday returned. Faces twisted in suspicion and hatred. Rifles clutched like extensions of their anger. One man spat on the ground. She's ours. Brad moved first, positioning himself in front of Olivia. Every movement, precise, calm. Walk away, he warned. Bob stepped forward instinctively, hands raised. Don't! Olivia grabbed his arm. Let him. Shots rang, splintering wood and kicking up dust. Brad deflected, aimed, and commanded without cruelty. The mob faltered, uncertainty overtaking aggression. Guns lowered. Men whispered in fear. Bob watched, breath shallow. Fear wrestled with awe. He realized the man he feared, the man he assumed was chaos incarnate, had saved not just Olivia, but the very principles Bob preached. Courage, choice, and protection of the innocent. When the dust settled, Brad leaned back against the railing, arms crossed, breathing even. Olivia approached, pressing her hand to his chest. "You're bleeding again." "I've survived worse," he said, with a faint grin. Bob stepped forward slowly, voice quiet, but strong. "I don't know why you protect her, why you care." Brad's eyes softened. "Because she matters. And because some things are worth the risk." Bob exhaled slowly, realizing that faith alone couldn't save her. Love, choice, and courage could. That night, as Olivia and Brad patched wounds and tended each other, Bob knelt silently outside the livery. He stared at the pulpit of the church in the distance, realizing his sermons had prepared him to control, but not to release. Some lessons could only be learned by stepping back. Olivia looked at Brad, moonlight illuminating the lines of his face. "I'm done running," she whispered. Brad touched her hand. "And I'm done letting you." Bob's heart ached with fear and pride. He understood, finally, that freedom came with danger, and love with responsibility, but he couldn't stop what had begun. Outside, Dry Creek held its breath, waiting to see which path they would take: fear or freedom, faith or fire. The first light of dawn cut across Dry Creek like a blade, painting the town gold and crimson. Dust rose from the streets as Olivia adjusted her saddle, heart pounding in time with the restless hooves of Brad's horse. Today, nothing would be the same. Brad stood beside her, calm and steady, the morning sun glinting off the scar along his cheek. He had slept little, thinking through the risks. Every muscle in his body was tense, ready for trouble, but he wasn't afraid anymore. Not with Olivia by his side. Bob arrived at the livery just as the town started to stir. His brown coat was dust-streaked, hands trembling as he gripped the railing. "Olivia," his voice cracked. "Please, don't go with him. This town, this life, it's too dangerous." Olivia shook her head. "I've lived in fear long enough, Bob. I'm choosing freedom, and maybe love." Brad placed a hand lightly on hers. "You don't have to be afraid anymore. Not today." Bob's jaw tightened, but he could see it. The choice had already been made. Nothing he said could unwrite the courage in her eyes. Then came the sound they'd feared, the clatter of boots on dirt. The same men from yesterday, armed and angry, had returned. Their leaders spat on the ground. "She belongs to this town." Brad moved instinctively, stepping in front of Olivia. "Back off," he said quietly, dangerously. Bob froze, torn between faith and fear, between what he preached and what he knew was right. One man raised a rifle. Brad didn't flinch. He let the barrel's weight and the man's intent settle in, calculating every second. His voice cut the air: "Leave now, or regret it." Shots rang out. Dust exploded into the street. Brad moved with precision, disarming one, blocking another. He didn't fire to kill, he fired to protect. Olivia's heart hammered. She pressed her hands to Brad's chest, feeling the heat and strength in him, the certainty he offered. Bob watched, stunned. The feared cowboy was not a monster. He was a shield, a choice. When the dust cleared, the mob had scattered. Guns lowered. Only silence remained, broken by Olivia's steady breath. Brad exhaled, leaning against the railing. "Are you hurt?" Olivia asked softly. "I've had worse," he said, smirking faintly. Bob stepped forward, shoulders sagging with relief and disbelief. "I don't understand why you care so much for her," he said to Brad. Brad's gaze softened. "Because she's worth it. Because some things, people are worth the risk." Olivia smiled, feeling the weight of years lift from her chest. "I'm done running," she whispered. Bob's eyes glistened. "Then go," he said finally, voice trembling, but accepting. "Go with him. Be free. Be happy." Brad held out his hand. Olivia took it without hesitation. Together, they mounted, stepping into the morning light as if the horizon itself had been waiting for them. Behind them, Dry Creek would talk for years about the preacher's sister, the feared cowboy, and the town that had almost torn them apart. But Olivia didn't care. She had chosen courage over comfort, love over fear. The two rode away slowly, dust swirling at their horses' hooves, hearts beating together, a promise in every step. And Bob watched them disappear, knowing that faith alone couldn't always protect, but sometimes love and choice could. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more Western stories.